Hey, Streetwalkers. I've been telling Steve for years, you need to put out the best episodes again so people can relive the thrill of the best ones, the ones that are really, really art. But that's almost all of them, isn't it, Streetwalkers? But this month, March 2024, you're going to get to hear my picks. Here we go.
I'm a fireball.
Hey, Streetwalkers, number 5 of Shawn's picks. This is probably my second favorite all-time episode. It's BJ Thomas. And, you know, Steve recorded this, or maybe it aired about 6 months before BJ Thomas passed on. But this was one of the deepest, most spiritual episodes of all the Fascination Street podcasts. And there's a ton of great music. But my personal favorite part of this episode is the story of BJ Thomas writing a song with his wife about their lifelong love affair. And I can barely keep from crying right now thinking about it. So I think you're going to dig this. Enjoy BJ Thomas.
Fireball.
Welcome to Fascination Street Podcast, BJ Thomas. How you doing today, BJ?
I'm doing good. How are you, Steve?
Well, I'm better now that I'm talking to you.
Yeah, I'm glad we finally hooked up.
Yeah, me too. Ladies and gentlemen, we have here an American treasure. BJ Thomas has basically done every song you've ever heard of. BJ has had 8 number 1 hits, sold over 70 million albums, and has had 46 songs on the Billboard Top 100. Am I lying about any of that?
Wow. Oh, man. I don't know. I hope not. That sounds good to me.
All right, BJ, tell me a little bit about where you were born and raised. Where'd you grow up, man?
Well, I was born in Oklahoma, but it was just the convenience. My grandmother delivered me, my dad's mother, in Hugo, Oklahoma. And when I was 2 weeks old and I could travel, we were driven back to Houston, and that's where I grew up, Houston, Texas, and various other little towns in Texas, but for the most part in Houston. And that's how it went.
Well, there used to be, I don't know if there still is, but there used to be a bumper sticker that said, I wasn't born here, but I got here as fast as I could. And that applies to you, my friend.
Absolutely, man. Well, everybody else is from Texas. And, you know, why didn't they make sure I was in Texas? But, over the years, after I got into my singing career, I became very close friends with Darrell K. Royal, who was the athletic director and the legendary football coach and All-American football player from Oklahoma. And we had many conversations about spending most of our lives in Texas, but being from Oklahoma, and he really helped me understand what a great state Oklahoma was. And, you know, and then eventually I went in the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, and so I really have a real love for Oklahoma now that I took a few years to acquire, but I still love Texas also.
Well, I should say so. So when did you know that you wanted to be in the music business? How did that happen? I know it happened young, but how did it happen that you got into music?
Well, you know, I never really had given it any thought about being a professional singer, really, until me and a few other guys, we formed a band. We were all 15. To tell you the truth, it wasn't until the first time I had to get up and perform and sing in front of a bunch of people that I realized, oh, my goodness, you know, what have I gotten myself into? Because I was totally unprepared. Even when I had my first hit and I went on the road, I had no idea. You know, I just had never let myself think about it, I guess, that I would be up in front of 12,000 people. And I had to just kind of learn how to do it on the spot. You know, I'd always been singing. They tell me even when I was an infant, I would be singing all the time. And I always loved music. My dad loved music. And so I kind of grew up with that. And I was just always singing. I sang in the church, you know, when I went. And, you know, after I got into the band, then it was kind of became a professional thing. I had never thought about that or ever thought about what that would involve and what that was going to be. So I was shocked about what it was, and I had to kind of learn quickly, as quick as I could.
Well, that makes sense. Now, your first big hit, I believe it was a cover song, right? I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry?
Well, it was a Hank Williams song. Hank had been dead, you know, since 49, I guess, when he died, or 50 or so. And I loved Hank Williams when I was a kid. When I was about in the 3rd, 4th grade, my dad took us all downtown in Houston, and we saw the Grand Ole Opry when they toured through Houston. And I saw Hank Williams and, various other country stars that looked like gods to me. And so I always loved Hank Williams. And when I had our band, the band was called the Triumphs. And it really wasn't my band, it was our band. But somewhere along the line, I saw a movie about Hank Williams, and we kind of picked that song off the soundtrack. It was like, hey, that sounds like a song I could do. And so I started performing I'm So Lonesome with my band. And, it became my first hit, my first million seller, and it had been recorded 72 times when I recorded it. So it had been recorded many times, and I don't know exactly why my song became a hit, but it did.
Well, I think you know why. You have that thing, that quality.
The moon just went behind the cloud, and I'm so lonesome I could cry.
But coming from Houston and a small town outside of Houston, how did that feel and how did that affect you when you had, boom, a smash, a million seller? Did it sell a million?
Yeah, it was a million seller. It was a shock, and in a way, it was kind of a dream come true kind of thing. We got the band together. We always thought, well, one day maybe we'll have a hit record, but we kind of inside, we knew that we never would. And so we just had fun playing. So when I actually did have my first hit, I spent a whole lifetime thinking about, when we formed the band is when I had started thinking about the music in a professional sense. So thinking, well, I've got a band now, we're recording, so maybe we'll have a hit record. And, we did. It kind of started selling records in 1965, and it went number one in Houston. And Scepter Records out of New York City leased my record, and it became a top 10 and was my first gold record. And it was, a dream come true, really.
Now, I think, and pardon me for saying this, but I think that you were 22 when that happened?
Yeah, I think I was 22. Exactly.
Well, Elvis did his first one like 19. What took you so long?
Well, actually, I had that thought process. I thought, I thought quite a few times, I thought, Elvis was 19 when he had his first hit record, and man, you need to get one. And, I didn't know how to have a hit record, or, we didn't know what a hit record sounded like. We were just kind of playing our music and doing our performances out in the boondocks to, big team dances and things. Sure enough, it did happen.
Well, that might seem like a bizarre thing, I guess, for people nowadays, that such a huge and accomplished musician would start off playing teen dances. But I would like to remind everybody that Van Halen was playing high school proms. So everybody's got to do it, right?
Oh, well, we did too. I mean, you've got to start somewhere. You can't just go straight to a stadium.
Well, you can, but they won't let you in.
Yeah, well, we just played the small group, high school kids, guys from our high school, our little canteen thing where we used to go, and it just kind of grew. And after a few years, we kind of became competitive with other bands in our area. Basically, we're too young. We didn't play nightclubs, but we played the big dance halls on the weekends, and it just kind of grew from there.
So back then, when you were not playing and you were just rolling around town, did everybody go crazy when they saw you?
No, not really. I mean, especially in my little town there where I was out west of Houston. It was kind of a little country town. It's not a little town anymore, but back then it was. And, they just kind of took it in stride. There were a few bands that played in that area. And, of course, lots of music was being done in Houston. And it wasn't that big a deal. After we started really sounding good and the kind of maybe some charisma was taking place, and we would get sometimes the people would scream and stuff at our dances. And so when that started happening, we knew hey, I think we're sounding good, and we just kept having fun with it. So how did that change your life to have a million-selling single or album? Well, really completely changed it. My first gig in late 1965, I went out for and toured with James Brown. And it was quite an eye-opening experience. And then, of course, after the record became a national hit, I worked with many of the R&B people, Percy Sledge and Jackie Wilson, a bunch of people. And so I was it was almost like going to school. I was kind of learning what I was doing. And when I first had Lonesome, I was perceived as being a black singer. So I worked with all the great R&B guys those first few years. That was great. I loved that. And then eventually I went to it with Dick Clark and just, did everything that I'd always dreamed of doing. It was a total life change for me.
How were you embraced by those predominantly black artists? I guess you sounded like them, so you were sort of a fit with that style. How was it touring with those dudes?
Well, the James, when I toured James Brown, his audience could be a little tough. I didn't realize that when I was working with him, but the first night I was out with James, he went on stage before I went on and said, hey, he kind of introduced me and said he liked me, and he said some good things about me, and so the audience was courteous, but it kind of grew. For the most part, I really connected with the people that were in the audience. And of course, it wasn't completely a black audience, and really the black entertainers, singers, writers, and those people. When I was young, those are the guys that I idolized. I was a big fan. I was close to Bobby Bland for a few years, and I loved those guys. And they sang the way I wanted to sing. They sang like they really meant what they were doing, as opposed to some of the white singers. They didn't sound that convincing. But I always had admired them, and of course I admire all singers, white singers too. But they're the ones that had the emotion and the movement in their performances, and that's what I wanted to do. So I was thrilled to work with them.
I can imagine. Actually, no, I can't. That's amazing. So then I think eventually you moved to Memphis, right? Before anything else giant happened, I think you moved to Memphis?
Yeah, I had a songwriter friend of mine, Mark James, the guy that wrote Suspicious Minds, and he wrote Hooked on a Feeling and The Eyes of a New York Woman for me. But I talked to him, and I wasn't really doing much. I'd had my first year, and I had 3 hit records, and I had done everything. But then the next year, I wasn't doing that much. He called me and advised me to come to Memphis. So my brother and I, we drove to Memphis, and I moved up there and started working with Chips Moman and the American Studio Group. And they had a bunch of writers up there, and, the American Studios and the American Studio Group, they were cutting hits on everybody. I started singing with those guys and making records with them, and I was making hits. I made The Eyes of a New York Woman, Hooked on a Feeling. Everything was going great, before I did Raindrops.
Now, let's talk about Raindrops.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 50-year anniversary of Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. Everybody knows that song. It's been covered by a few people, but BJ's original version is the most iconic and the most prolific. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, but that song won an Academy Award for Best Song from a Film, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid in 1970. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. They had a scene in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. They call it the bicycle scene, and Paul Newman was riding a bicycle with Catherine Ross, and of course he was Butch Cassidy. And they had written Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head for that scene. And I'd previously been working with Mr. Bacharach looking for songs for a couple of months, and he was producing and writing most of the material for Dionne Warwick, and I was on the same label with her, Scepter Records, in New York City. And Gloria and I had moved up, and I had been working with him and looking for songs, and then the bicycle scene came up for Butch Cassidy, and then I got the shot to do it, and a wonderful experience, and of course the biggest record of my career, and great.
Now, you did perform that song on the Academy Awards stage, right?
I did. I performed it in 1970 for the Academy Awards. Mr. Bacharach won 2 Academy Awards that night, and Hal David won 1. And I performed as a big production number and at a rehearsal the day before. I thought, man, I think we're going to win this thing. Why are they having this big production if we're not going to win it? But I don't know if that was the way to look at it. But I did perform on the Academy Award show. It was quite an experience getting up in front of all those movie stars and whatever. And it's just something I'll never forget, of course.
Of course. Now, this is sort of a bizarre question, but I guess that award only went to the writers, not the performer?
Yeah, I just went to the composer, Burt Bacharach. He composed the music to Raindrops, and he also composed the score of the movie. So he got 2 Academy Awards. And they should give the singer one, but of course they don't.
I definitely think they should.
Absolutely.
But at least you get bragging rights.
They should change that.
Yeah, heck yeah. Now, the actual recording of that, I guess for the film, there's a little story behind that, right?
Well, yeah, I had been doing performing for 3 weeks through the Midwest, doing one-nighters. And, by the time I got to California, I went to a doctor about my throat. I couldn't even talk a couple of days before our session. And as it turns out, I had an acute case of laryngitis. And the doctor told me not to even speak for 2 weeks. And I said, oh, man, I've got a session to do. And so anyway, he gave me some pills to shrink my vocal cords. But, man, I could barely even talk. And I went to rehearsal the day before the session with Mr. Bacharach, and he could tell. I was even thinking, man, if you show up like this, he's going to fire you. But I thought, well, it's not about not showing up. I'm going to show up and see what happens. And as it turns out, he kind of liked the way it sounded. It was kind of scratchy and rough. And it worked well, of course, for the film. So thank goodness. We re-recorded the song 6 weeks later for the single record that became number 1.
And that's a lesson to all you kids out there. Even though he didn't think it was going to work, he still showed up because he said he would. And guess what? It turned out. So even if you think whatever's about to happen is not going to happen the way you think, show up. Be a person of your word and see what happens.
I had thought through that, and I thought, well, you could say, oh, hey, I'm sick, or, you could whatever. And I just said, well, you know what? I'm just going to show up and do it. And as it turns out, one of the movie people said on the next day, the Sunday, when we did the bicycle scene, he said, that's a good idea. You're trying to sound like Paul Newman singing. And I said, well, I didn't really say anything, but I thought, well, maybe it's working, So, and when I hear it now, it doesn't sound as bad as I thought it sounded then. But Bert liked it, so I thought, well, that's good enough for me.
Yeah, that's good enough, right? Yeah. That is awesome. That is a wonderful song. And actually, that song was playing over here at my house when I was like, hey, you know what? I should reach out and see if I could talk to that fella. So it was that song that did it again. Yeah,
I'm glad you did.
Yeah, me too.
Everything connected with that song came out perfectly. I mean, I had the laryngitis, but, it worked out. Just everything with the song, the great movie, the genius writers and composers, and it just all seemed to gel together. It hardly ever does that. It'll do it every now and then, but it was just kind of the perfect meeting of singer, movie, composer, writer. I mean, it just, everything, every angle you look at that situation and what happened, it just ended up perfectly. So it's been something that I have really treasured and appreciated all my career.
Well, that is probably why you're still in business, because those people who don't appreciate that kind of get left back by the industry. Now, you also had a huge hit with Wrong Song, which everybody else knows as Play Me Another Somebody Did Me Wrong song.
Yeah. The title really is Somebody Done Somebody Wrong Song. Hey, won't you play, in parentheses. It was written by Chips Moman and Larry Butler. Larry Butler was the guy that produced all the hits on Kenny Rogers, and Chips Moman was a legendary musician that played on the, Aretha Franklin records and became one of the best producers of music of all time. And I recorded with them for years in Memphis, and we made a lot of hits together, and that worked out good too.
Yeah, it did.
Hey, won't you play another Somebody Done Somebody Wrong song and make me feel at home while I miss my baby,
Now, forgive me for asking, and I don't need any numbers, but sort of how the Academy Award went to the writers and the performer got nothing but the bragging rights. Do the royalties work that way? Do they get paid and you don't, or do you also get paid?
No. Yeah, I got paid royalties. I made a nice chunk of money. And, of course, it's been a kind of a part of my drawing card for years. So in the long run, I made a lot of money. I don't have an Academy Award, but I was involved with one, and that's been good enough, and made enough money off of it.
Well, good. That's, like I said, I don't need numbers or anything. I just needed to know that you were taken care of, because I know that back in the day, the industry had a habit of not paying royalties.
Well, I was from a generation of the business that one of the industry practices was to not pay, was to pay the least possible. I mean, the example of Little Richard never made a penny in royalties, and he was one of the greatest rock and roll singers of all time. So you had to do your business correctly, and even when you did good business, the industry practice would kind of go against you. But you just have to be a very good businessman, because money is a huge distraction for some people.
Yeah, no kidding. So it's good to keep your eyes on the business part.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
Hey, Streetwalkers. On February 26th, we will release our 400th episode. I want to give each and every one of you a huge thank you for riding with me all the way to this giant mile marker. For the first time since the show started, I'm going to be taking a little break for the month of March. There will be no new episodes, but instead, I'll release an older episode every weekday of the month in a best-of style, showcasing some of my wife's favorite conversations. Enjoy these 21 Fascination Street classics Monday through Friday, every weekday in the month of March, and I'll be back with all new episodes beginning April 1st. I couldn't do this without you, so tell a friend, and thanks again for being Streetwalkers.
Let's get back into it.
Now, if we can transition just a little bit, you also had a hit with the song Hooked on a Feeling.
When you hold me in your arms so tight, you let me know everything's alright. I'm hooked on a feeling, high on believing that you're in love with me.
Oh, yeah. Right before Raindrops, I had the Hooked on a Feeling. Of course, you're probably going to mention the Blue Swede thing.
I would never do that because I'm offended that James Gunn didn't choose your version.
Oh, yeah, I would love for that to have been the case. But, the Blue Swede thing, honestly, I think they maybe covered me a little too soon. But, there's no denying that the Blue Swede song was a beautiful production. And I never have had any hard feelings about that. And it made my buddy Mark James, who wrote the song, a lot of money. And really, I've never had any regrets about that.
Well, it's good that you're sweet like that, because your buddy Mark, I guess, he started collecting money all over again when that movie came out.
Well, Mark has been a very successful songwriter. He's in the Country Writer Hall of Fame, and he's in the regular Hall of Fame. He wrote Suspicious Minds that Elvis Presley recorded, and he's been a great writer, and he's one of my best friends, and so good for him,
That's awesome. Now, speaking of Elvis, I believe that Elvis covered a few of your songs, right?
Yeah, of course, I was around Elvis a time or two when I lived in Memphis, and he was a wonderful guy. He liked me, and he liked my music. I think one of the reasons, my second record was a song called Mama, and of course, he loved his mama, and I sang for him a few times, and he was a wonderful guy, and he loved my music, and he would not necessarily cover my records, but he would perform them.
Speaking of Elvis Presley, I guess he liked you and your music. A little birdie told me that sometimes when he would throw a party or get together at Graceland, he would hire you to perform.
Yeah, I sang for him a couple of times. He really didn't hire me. I mean, he asked me to come and sing, and I would. He had a Valentine's party at one of the nightclubs there in Memphis, and he asked me to come and sing, and I did. So that was a great experience for me also.
Heck yeah. Did he ever get up and sing with you?
No, but he sat at the front table, and when I sang I'm So Lonesome, he sang along with me, and of course I could hear him, and he was great. He was wonderful.
That is fantastic. Now, switching gears just a little bit, you're not a super religious person, but back in the 70s, you and your wife had a spiritual experience. You don't have to if you don't want to, but can you talk about that and how that led to your having the very first platinum Christian album in history?
Oh, yeah, no problem. I don't mind talking about that. I have a faith that is centered around the teachings and the example of the life of Jesus Christ. And I believe in love. I'm treating other people like you would have them treat you. I never could really make the religious precepts work about, oh, this is bad, that's whatever those things are. I never did. That never worked for me. The example that Jesus set, that who we can be, who we all can be, if we love ourselves and love other people, I connected with that, and that's what kind of turned us around. I had, alcohol and drug problems for years back then, so that kind of turned me around and got me sober, and that's made all the difference. And so I was approached to make a gospel record soon after maybe the news got out to the music business, and I was not really aware of the gospel music business. So I made this gospel record, and to my really surprise, it became the first platinum record in the gospel business. And I had 4 platinum albums, and that's where I won my Grammys, and it was a beautiful experience for me also.
How many Grammys?
5.
Are they all for Christian music?
They're all gospel, all for the gospel music. My first 4 albums especially were the most successful albums that I ever had. The 5th album was a compilation with a bunch of my friends. It was somebody else's project, and I was a part of it, and they won a Grammy, and we all won a Grammy. But that was a good time in my life, and it was a successful time, and it was kind of the creation of contemporary Christian music, as they call it. That was a great experience also.
Well, let me ask you this. I love asking people where they keep their hardware. Where do you keep those Grammys?
Well, they're in a case down here in my living room. They're on one row of this kind of glass case there, and I've got some golf trophies in there and and some crystal stuff in there, and my Grammys are on one shelf, and, just about every day I pass by those things, and I look at them, and I think, I love them. That's great,
Well, I think that's awesome. Some people say they don't know where their Emmy is, or they don't know where their Grammy is or whatever, which I always find hard to believe.
Yeah, I know. I don't get that.
But I love that you have them displayed right there.
Yeah, I just have them down here, and people can look at them when they're over or whatever. And I've got a few of my gold records, although I've given about 2/3 of them away. But I've got a few of the gold and platinum records down in the office, and they bring back good memories when I notice them.
Well, they should. Can I ask you a personal question?
Sure, absolutely.
Why would you give away your gold records?
Well, I mean, you just kind of, you get a motivation sometime to give some things away. If you have that feeling that you want to give something away, you've got to do it, because once you think you should give it away, then it'll always be somebody else's if you don't give it away. And so sometimes I've been motivated to give one of my gold record things to a friend or a band member or something like that. And, I can always get reproductions, so it's not a big deal.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that you could do that. That's awesome.
There are places where you can go, and they have the RIAA symbol, and they can give you really authentic reproductions of your gold records. So, really, after so many years go by, you're not really tied to them in the kind of sense that you can't let them go. I can have one reproduced or something, so I don't feel like I'm giving anything of myself away in that sense where I feel a loss. I feel good about giving them away sometimes.
That makes sense. That's real sweet. I'll be sure to send you my address when we're done here. Now, moving on, you also, because having hits in country, hits in pop, and hits in contemporary Christian music, that wasn't enough. You had to go and write one of the greatest TV theme songs of my generation.
Yeah.
And until about last week, I was under the impression that Alan Thicke sang this song. And the reason that I thought that is because Alan Thicke did he wrote and sang a bunch of TV theme songs back in the day.
Did.
And he was actually on this show, Growing Pains.
That's true.
Which I raced home every day to watch. I never missed an episode.
Show me that smile again.
Show me that smile.
Don't waste another minute on your crying. We're nowhere near the end. The best is ready to begin. Oh, as long as we got each other, we got the world spinning right in our hands, baby, you and me. We gotta be the luckiest dreamers who never quit dreaming. As long as we keep on giving, we can take anything that comes our way. Baby, rain or shine, all the time. We got each other, sharing the laughter and love.
So your song, As Long as We Got Each Other, the theme from Growing Pains, it permeated my childhood. So thank you so much. That is an amazing song, and I love it to pieces.
Oh, you're welcome.
Tell me a cool story about doing that song.
Well, the Long As We Got Each Other was a theme to, of course, the Growing Pains, and the music was composed by Stephen Dorff, and the lyrics were written by John Bettis, and both those guys are in the Songwriters Hall of Fame. And, I got a call one evening. I was home, and I answered the phone, and it was a guy named Stephen Dorff. And he said, look, I'm writing a song with John Bettis, and he said, it's a theme song for a pilot they're fixing to shoot. And he said, it's coming out so much like a B.J. Thomas song. He said, we want to know if you'll sing it, because if you don't sing it, it sounds so much like you that we're going to have to change it up. So we need to know. And I said, hey, I'd love to sing it. So, we ended up recording the song in California, and didn't really have that high hopes for Growing Pains. But the first night it was televised, it was the most watched show in New York City. And so it was just an instant hit record. And, that was also wonderful to be connected with that show and those actors and so great people.
Well, I loved that show. It was phenomenal. Everybody on it did a great job. And as a weird sort of circle around, Kirk Cameron ended up becoming one of the most religious and outspoken Christian, I guess, leaders. And, that's sort of neat, because going back to, you had the first platinum Christian album.
Yeah.
So maybe there's some things at work there.
Well, I think things work out as they should. I think we're in a difficult time in our country, and I don't think religion has done much good for most people. So when people go so religious, that is so opposite from what I have done. And I'm certainly not criticizing or judging anyone, but I don't think religion serves the purpose that they should. I think they should go back and take a real look at what Jesus was trying to show with his life, and it wasn't religion. It was about loving people of all colors. I think we're in a time now where, racism is out of control, and I don't really see where religion has had much effect on how people are into this racism. So I don't mind being associated with those people, with the Christian people, religious people in the musical sense, but I don't identify with them.
That makes sense. Understandable.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors. Let's get back into it.
I did hear that your wife, Gloria, helped you write a song of yours a long time ago. Can you tell me how that happened?
Well, she wrote quite a few of my gospel material, and she also wrote one of my number one country records, a song called New Looks from an Old Lover. And she was just a songwriter for many years. She's not writing much at the present time, but she was a great writer in her time. She can still write, but she's not that motivated right now.
Sure. So that song...
New Looks from an Old Lover, yeah.
I feel your fingers touching my body and mind as they brush through my hair. I'm getting new looks from an old lover again.
All right, tell me a story about how that happened.
Oh, well, I think she was talking to somebody on the phone, and she was telling her friend, she says, hey, I'm even getting new looks from my old lover. And when she got off of the phone, I said, you need to write that. And so I was recording in Nashville at the time, and she wrote that song with Red Lane, and it was a number one record, And she wrote quite a few of my gospel things, and she's just really a good writer.
Very cool. She sounds like an amazing woman, because I think you guys are, 52 years married?
52 years, yeah.
And it is my understanding that she has put up with a lot of stuff from you over the years. So that is a remarkable woman.
Yeah, it wasn't easy getting through a lot of the tough years, but we've been really thankful to have each other during this quarantine. And, we've been pretty much in-house for 5 months. So it's been great hanging out.
Yeah, I agree. My wife and I, she works from home now, and our relationship has only gotten better. And I think that if the foundation of your relationship is a good foundation, then spending this much time together is not going to break you up like it seems to be doing for a lot of people.
Oh, no, never. Nothing would ever break us up.
That's awesome. You, at one point, I think it was on your 39th birthday, you'll have to forgive me, I'm going from memory here. On your 39th birthday, you became a member of the Grand Ole Opry?
Yeah, I became a member in 1982, so we'll figure that out. I forget exactly how old I was. I was recording at that time with Pete Drake, who was also in the Hall of Fame and one of the great country musicians of all time, a great steel guitar player. And we were making records in Nashville, and he wanted to see me become a member, and I became attracted to it. They did accept me and made me a member, and I've always appreciated being a member of such a great organization.
And now I think you're listed as maybe a retired member, or somehow you are not an active member or whatever, right?
Well, I show up when I can, but I haven't been very active Opry-wise over the last number of years. But I'm still a member, and I show up when I can.
That's beautiful. Real quick, I think in 2008 there was a fire at Universal, and I guess some of your stuff was in there. Is that right?
Yeah, some of my stuff was in there. Most of my Memphis masters, there were copies made. They are in Georgia right now in the Chips Moman estate. But yeah, all the other masters and many, many, many other masters were lost, and quite an oversight not to have copied those things, but that's the way it goes.
That is the way it goes. Well, I understand that you have places to go and things to do, so I want to go ahead and say thank you very much. Everybody, currently this is the 50th anniversary of Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, and I believe that if you go to his website, which I believe is bjthomas.com,
yeah,
you can buy all kinds of stuff, including signed vinyl records.
Yeah, just all kinds of stuff. And I really have enjoyed talking to you, man. I'm glad we finally hooked up after we had a little trouble there.
Me too, and once again, I apologize.
Oh, no problem.
And real quick, would it be possible, and it's okay if you say no, can I play Raindrops?
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome.
You don't need my permission.
B.J. Thomas, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to hang out and let us get to know you a little bit better on Fascination Street, man. I really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, man. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, B.J.
Okay, buddy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Raindrops are falling on my head, and just like the guy whose feet are too big for his bed, nothing seems to fit. Those raindrops are falling on my head, they keep falling. So I just did me some talking to the sun, and I said I didn't like the way he got things done, sleeping on the job. Those raindrops are falling on my head, they keep falling. But there's one thing I know, the blues they send to meet me won't defeat me. It won't be long till happiness steps up to greet me. Raindrops keep falling on my head, but that doesn't mean my eyes will soon be turning red. Crying's not for me, 'cause I'm never gonna stop the rain by complaining, because I'm free. Nothing's worrying me. It won't be long till happiness steps up to greet me. Raindrops keep falling on my head, but that doesn't mean my eyes will soon be turning red. Crying's not for me, 'cause I'm never gonna stop the rain by complaining, because I'm free. Nothing's worrying me.
Opening music is the song FSP Theme, written, performed, and provided by Ambush Vin. Closing music is from the song Say My Name off the 2021 album Underdog Anthems, used with permission from Jax Hollow. If you like the show, tell a friend. Subscribe and rate and review the show on iTunes and wherever else you download podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. All the episodes are available there as well. Check me out on Vero at Fascination Street Pod and TikTok at Fascination Street Pod. And again, thanks for listening.